Hey folks, going live today, talking about Mars in Aries. In the Gandantha point, Mars has just moved from Pisces into Aries. This was one of the big shifts that I talked about in my 2020 forecast, that Mars was going to be in Pisces or Aries in these two signs um, from the middle of May until into 2021. So Mars has been back and forth in between these two signs since May, right? He was in Pisces, then he went into Aries, then he went back into Pisces. And so, again, this was part of my 2020 forecast. As you can see on the screen there, there's a link, or there's a screencast to the 2021 forecast. I am letting people know that you can register for that. There's a link there. 2021vedicastrology.com, and you can go and register for that free 2021 forecast. And as you can see there, you just go, you can click register, and you can either watch the instant replay, or you can set up a time to watch it in the next couple of days. And it's very easy. I do talk about 10 of the most important shifts. Again, in 2020, I talked so much about how early in the year we were going to have such intense energy with all these planets in Capricorn and whatnot. And of course, we know the way 2020 turned out. And also those eclipses, the big eclipse we just had. I talked about that in the 2020 forecast. So again, in 2021, you're going to want to be ready. Again, just around the corner, January 12th, we have the first big shift. The new moon in Sagittarius, with a bunch of planets also in Capricorn again. So these times are right around the corner, and you can be prepared. You can just go and register for that free web class. And again, you'll learn about the upcoming Mercury retrograde cycles, the exalted Venus, the eclipses of 2021. All of those things are going to be obviously quite powerful, and I talk about them in great detail, more than an hour on that web class. And I also talk about your sign and how you're going to be able to process the Jupiter transit, because Jupiter in 2021 moves in between Capricorn and Aquarius. What does that shift mean for you? What does that shift of Jupiter moving from Capricorn to Aquarius mean for you? Well, if you're a Cancer person, it's moving in between your 7th and 8th houses. If you're a Gemini, it's moving in between your 8th and 9th houses. If you're a Scorpio, it's moving in between your 3rd and 4th houses. So again, I talk about that as well in that free web class. So please take me up on that offer if you haven't already. But today's business, we're going to be talking about Mars just crossed the Gandantha point. This is the chart of today. You see, this is December 24th, 2021. And as you can see, Mars just crossed over in the Gandantha point. If I run this back even yesterday, you see Mars was here. He was at this time yesterday. Mars was also in the Gandantha point of between Pisces and Aries. Now, just explain what Gandantha means. It's the point between the water and the fire signs. And it actually it literally means untying the knot. And the knot is, the way I interpret this, which seems to make a lot of sense, is that at these points, the knots which hold the zodiac together most of the time, because you have nakshatras that are in between the rashis. So it ties them together like a knot. So for example, Aries is knotted or tied together with Taurus through Kritika nakshatra. By the way, again, you should understand this is purely sidereal Vedic astrology. I just did an update a couple days ago, again, quoting all the text and the principles behind the sidereal astrology of India. Again, there's no debate about this. It's in all the text, conceptually in the text and whatnot. But one of the deepest principles that really shows this connection between the nakshatras and the rashis is this concept of Gandantha. You have no Gandantha once you separate the Rashis from the Nakshatras. Once you separate the signs from the Nakshatras, Gandantha doesn't exist, right? And of course, it's in pretty much all the texts as well. So it's the idea that, again, Aries and Taurus are joined or knotted by the nakshatra of Kritika. Taurus and Gemini are knotted or joined by the nakshatra of Mrigashira. Gemini and Cancer are knotted or joined through the nakshatra of Punarvasu. But then between Cancer and Leo, there's no knot. The nakshatra stops and the Rashi stops on Aslesha and Magha, and that's called Gandantha. So it literally it means untying the knot, or the knot coming apart. So in the Gandantha points, in between Cancer and Leo, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and right now, Pisces and Aries, it's like the knot loosens. It comes untied. So what happens with Gandantha points, one of the things you can really understand is this loosening of the knot that was holding things together. Things are holding together, and then all of a sudden they're loosened, and the knot becomes untangled. And again, as a spiritual person, you can see the potential in that, because we're then sort of open, right? And when we're not so knotted or tied or joined or sort of tethered to the world and to our karma and whatnot, there's a lot of spiritual potential in things getting untangled, because that's another way to look at it, getting unraveled. And in fact, the first Gandantha point is from Aslesha to Magha, and Aslesha literally means tangled or entwined. So you can really see it in Aslesha and Magha. But the principle being is that on a spiritual level, when we pass through these Gandantha points, energy gets kind of, unpredictable. I was looking for a word like sclooby or squooby or sploogy or something, and it just wasn't coming. So I figure I'll make up a word. Sploogy. How about? Gets kind of sploofy, right? Where something was happening and then it kind of gets untangled, unraveled, and the knot comes apart, and you're just kind of cast adrift a little bit. And one of the ways to understand it, if you've ever done a lot of boating, which I haven't done a lot of boating, but I grew up on the water, and it's like the boat is moored or tied to the dock, let's say. You use a knot to tie something and to secure it and to hold it together, right? Or like your shoelace is coming untied. Now it's kind of, you got to stop, and because you just feel kind of like, I might step on my shoelaces, and we feel like we need to, tie it. But it's also like, let's say that a boat becomes untied from the dock. It becomes unmoored. Well, then the boat just sets off and is sort of adrift. It's just kind of, just sort of, bouncing around. Darcy said the Granti opens, right? Granti is another word for knot. And so it untangles. And so, again, when planets pass through there, or if someone has a planet there on their natal chart or whatnot, again, it's considered to be quite a blemish at times. But again, the reason the sages and the rishis talked about things like that is because it shows an unreliability and a stress and a difficulty. But even when they point to things that are difficult, like Gandantha, which there's a lot of focus on Gandantha, there's all kinds of remedies that are just performed for a Gandantha birth, like the nakshatra or the moon or the sun in the Gandantha points. The reason is because it can bring poor health, it can bring confusion, but that doesn't mean that confusion or poor health or whatever is necessarily, on a spiritual level, a quote bad thing. They're always just trying to give indications, because underneath it all, everything is divine and infused with that divine source. But we have to also focus on when things get difficult, or the things we're trying to accomplish gets kind of wonky. I see my friend Darcy also said wonky. That's a good word. When things get wonky or unpredictable or confusing, and they're confusing relative to the nakshatras. Every Gandantha is not the same. The Aslesha Magha Gandantha is very different than the Jyeshta Mula Gandantha, and very different than the Revati Ashwini Gandantha. They're all different. Right? Aslesha Magha is very much personal and emotional and psychological, and where our attachments and our, again, because Aslesha is a lot about attachments and entwining and entangling and being tangled up in our attachments, and how those attachments, we try to build this powerful kingdom on all of these attachments, and it's the stress of that, the unpredictability and the stress of that, and how one ends and another one begins. It's like an ending and a reset on each of the Gandantha points. So it's kind of like Aslesha is a cruel nakshatra because we have to make peace with our attachments and the things we're tangled up in. And it tends to be harsh because it stops, it doesn't go into the next sign. You need to make a clean break on some level and go from Aslesha right into Magha, which is Leo, and the teachings and the ancestors, and it's a harsh kind of transition. It's abrupt. It doesn't move from one Rashi into another. So that one is wrenching in that regard on a sort of personal, psychological level. The Jyeshta Mula is more, again, it's also more psychological and more about power and transcendence, because Jyeshta it's ruled by Lord Indra. It's about vengeance and avenging, difficulty, and it can have that sort of quality, and needing to, again, let go of that and stop, because Mula comes next and just rips the heart out of all that stuff. It says, oh, you want to avenge something? You want to be a tough guy? Oh, you're a big tough guy? Okay, how about I rip the foundation out from everything? Okay, I uproot everything you thought was real and powerful. That's what Mula does. So Jyeshta's like, I'm going to win, I'm going to avenge, and it's very intense on that, just like Aslesha is intense about those entanglements. Jyeshta's like, no, I'm the king, I'm going to win. And Mula's like, oh, really? Whoosh. Now try to win. You don't have any kingdom anymore. You think you're powerful? Again, so Jyeshta Mula has a harshness right there. That's why that Gandantha is so stressful. Of the three Gandanthas, Revati Ashwini is much more gentle. It's about liberation. But it's no less transitional and confusing, because Revati is the end of the zodiac circle, right? It's the end of Pisces, where we're letting go. That's what Pisces is about. And Revati is the shepherd. And it's the shepherd that leads us home. It's the last, and literally, and Ashwini is where it starts over again. So again, Revati Ashwini is probably the most gentle on some level, because Revati is quite gentle, but it's also the total end of one thing, where we've been letting go of something, and we see something letting go. We see something, we're surrendering and letting go of something, and we see something like a trend or a situation just waning. We watch it. It's like a shepherd is leading something away from us for a while, and we're watching it go. But then at some point it's gone, and now Ashwini starts, which is Aries, and it's like, okay, now start running again. Next thing, go, boom. So again, these Gandantha points, the nakshatra ends and the Rashi ends. So it's usually, again, when a sign ends, except for these 3 points, there's a nakshatra there. So when Aries goes into Taurus, it's not so abrupt, because the nakshatra of Kritika is there, and it has parts of both. Kritika is ruled by the god Agni, but it's also where you, for example, contain the fire, like a fire pit, where we do pujas and whatnot. You can see a fire contained in the earth, and there's less of a wrenching transition between Aries and Taurus. Taurus and Gemini, again, nakshatra Mrigashira is like a deer. So it's this quality of a deer that kind of bridges Taurus and Gemini. So when planets are in between those two, it's not as wrenching even when it gets to the last degrees. The qualities of both Rashis are are found in those transitional nakshatras. When you get at the end of the water signs and start the fire signs, again, it's a whole different thing. The Rashi ends, the nakshatra ends. And so again, from maybe the most gentle nakshatra, Revati is said to be the most blessed because it's toothless. The god Pushan doesn't have any teeth. And it's just about surrender. And again, it's often like watching something go and realizing and being able to let things go. Like, okay, that's it. It's done. It's okay. And I can be at peace with that thing just going. So when planets are powerful in Revati, it's easy for us to make peace with things that are leaving. But again, as it crosses over now, it's Aries and Ashwini, and it's two horses, and they're like, all right, now I'm ready. I'm ready for the next thing. And the issue with Ashwini is to be focused, because again, it's two horses, and again, the beginning of Aries, it can be a lot of energy going in a lot of different directions, like two horses running in different ways. And so this transition of Mars going back into Aries now, where he's the ruler, of course, so there's also a lot of energy with Mars as the ruler of Aries. He's been in Pisces, and we've felt a certain amount of willfulness and energy and what everything Mars represents, which is like focus and discipline and energy. The last couple months, it's been in Pisces, and especially the last week and a half to 2 weeks or so, it's been moving toward that last Gandantha point. And we're just kind of making peace with whatever it was before is kind of ending and kind of surrendering, and the next thing coming. And we're ready to be enthusiastic and passionate about the next thing that's coming. So right now, the last few days, like I say, on the 23rd, even if we go back, it's about 1 degree. So it's literally been the last, if you go to the 21st, so since the solstice, and that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction or whatever, one of the things that also happened was Mars hit that Gandantha point as well. So again, we're just in a phase of a lot of transitional energy. So since then, in the last few days, this is the 23rd, this is the 24th, Mars crosses over into Aries. So now it's on the other side of the Gandantha, which is less about just trusting or seeing it all work out. Now Mars is in the Aries part of the Gandantha, which is, all right, now I'm ready to do something. Okay, if this is the new world that's coming, well, now I'm fired up to do something. And Mars is in Ashwini, where Mars has sort of jumped on the back of the two horses, and he's trying to ride those two horses into the next thing. So this is why, even when we look at, the news of the last couple days, interesting here in the U.S., particularly with, trying to get there's a bill through Congress and all this other kind of stuff. They thought it was going to be passed, and then all of a sudden, the president comes in and goes, no, and now, again, a whole new course, and now, again, God knows what's going to happen with that, but even just the feeling of, we're all ready to be moving on to the next thing, and we can feel that kind of energy and enthusiasm and restlessness about it. And again, this is because it's Mars passing through that Gandantha point, and that's the nature of Mars, right? When Mars is in when Mars is in Pisces, it's actually quite good for that sort of spiritual warrior energy, because it's in Pisces, and Pisces is about being, resigned to, surrendering and connecting with the higher creative, mystical, metaphysical nature of things. But again, Mars goes into Aries now. In no small way, we're kind of ready to fight, ready to battle. We could see in the next, within the next month and a half or so, a lot of contentiousness, battling. I wouldn't necessarily say going to war or anything, but those things could happen. There could be some real, definitely some militant activities with Mars having gone back and forth now and hanging out in these two signs, and now jumping into Aries, especially the beginning, the next week or so, or, while Mars is going through Ashwini. Run this forward several days, we see Mars is going through Ashwini, into up until January 20. Um, up where is it? Ashwini 14th. He goes into so up until the 22nd or so. And then Bharani is the next nakshatra, but Bharani often shows the results of Ashwini and the being scattered and not being so focused and having two horses going in different directions. That first part of Aries, we feel the consequences of that and the severity of that sort of disarray often in Bharani nakshatra, which shows the consequences and the need to be more focused and again to get those two horses pulling in the same direction rather than scattered all over the place. Now nobody knows what the heck is going on, which is the detrimental quality of Ashwini. And in the news we can see this as, in fact, what happened yesterday as Mars was moving into Ashwini. Again, big news that the president came out and decided to, hold up this bill that was coming out. That happened, like the day before, hold up the bill, and now, again, insist on more money, which would have been great if he would have been saying that 6-8 months ago when the Democrats were trying to get more money the whole time. They passed this bill, they spent all this time on it, and then by the time, it's not a great bill, but by the time it's ready to be signed, then he goes, no, give us more money. Again, now it's all up in the air. It's like, are you not going to sign this one? Are you going to wait? Now what does that mean? That means what? Nobody gets anything? Again, chaos, like up in the air. Like, what is this? And it's harder with the president. It's harder on his own party. It makes them look worse because now the Democrats can go, see, we've been saying this the whole time. And now his own party now has to vote against a bill that they actually passed. So again, it's like, what are you trying to do? What is the point of this now? I'm not going to speculate, but I'm just using this as an example. Obviously, I could speculate, but I don't feel like getting into all that. I'm just using this as an example of that's what disarray means. That's what all of a sudden everything gets untangled, unmoored, like the boat is now adrift out to sea, and we don't know what direction we're going. What does this even mean? So again, that's definitely not getting the two horses in the same direction and moving forward. It's, well, I'm doing this, and now everybody, who knows what's happening. So this is the energy at the beginning of Aries in general. And you can see Aries as like the infant being born. It's like the baby being born where all of a sudden, whoosh, right? It's like a baby, like an infant. And those first degrees, of course, are like a young baby, which, again, it's just kind of barely here. It's barely even in the body. It's not thinking about consequences. It's just a lot of impulses and things like that. So we're seeing that, especially with the Mars, with the Mars nature here. And on the 24th, again, also today, the moon is also there. So we had the moon and Mars both move, a big shift from the 23rd to the 24th. If we go back yesterday, well, the moon had just gone in later in the day. So again, this is one day. But so I guess the moon was a few hours ahead of Mars. But so big shift. And again, this Mars in Aries is a big shift. Now, because he's going to be set up there, he's not going to stop and then go retrograde back into Pisces and then go forward again, which is what he did before. And again, I talked about this. This was one of the big features in the 2020 forecast. I featured this idea of Mars being in either Pisces or Aries. Again, it started, I think it was May 18th. May 18th, Mars went into Pisces. And he goes all the way through Pisces, pokes his head in Aries, stops, goes retrograde, back into Pisces. Again, since May, he's been in only 2 signs. And he's going to be there until, again, like early February. So from May 18th until February, Mars is in only 2 signs. So it's a huge thing when Mars goes retrograde and occupies 2 signs like this. And so Now, though, he's not going to dip his head back into Pisces again. He's going to keep going through Aries. And so now until early February, let's just look at the exact dates here. See when Mars actually leaves. It's going to be, I think it was February 14th or something. Let's see. We'll just run him all the way through 28th, 30, maybe further, 20, what is it? 21st, February 21st. So again, from now to February 21st, that's 2 months. Mars is going to be in Aries. So again, that's a big 2 months. It's about a new course. It could be a new enthusiastic course. Again, there's always a potential for tantrums and blow-ups and a bloody new course with Mars. Particularly, you can look and see where we're at right now in U.S. politics and even around the world with COVID and whatnot. A lot of potential for things to get weird and explosive and contentious. And so we're on the verge of that right now. So again, I just want to also one more time put this up here, this 2020 forecast. You can get, and one of the main things I'm talking about in the 2020 forecast is talking about this inspiration for your sign based on Jupiter, because Jupiter makes a big shift in 2021, right? Now he's in Capricorn, right? And he's going to go through Capricorn. He'll go through there pretty quickly, and he's going to be in Aquarius starting in the middle of April, or it's actually April 5th. And he's there until September, until middle of September. And then he goes retrograde, and then goes back into Capricorn, and then goes forward again. So Jupiter is going to, just like Mars was last year in between Pisces and Aries, really featuring these two signs. So think about it in your chart. Like if you're, let's say you're Virgo, then this Mars transit has put a big emphasis on 7th and 8th house themes. Your 7th house of relationships, your 8th house of the vulnerabilities that come up in relationships. Big focus of this year since the middle of May of this year through next year. So again, on this 2021 forecast, I'm going to talk about this big shift of Jupiter through these two signs the whole year. It's going to be in Capricorn and Aquarius, and bringing a big shift and emphasis on that area of life for you. So if you're Libra, it's going to be the 4th and the 5th houses. That's going to be a big source of Jupiterian growth. And so, again, all you need to do is go there, click register. You can either watch the instant replay, watch it right now, or you'll be notified. You'll get a replay link, or set up a time to watch it over the next few days. And so, again, aside from learning about this important Jupiter shift and the inspiration for your sign, there's also the eclipses, there's the Mercury retrograde cycles, big Mercury retrograde cycles this year. They're very powerful. And again, one of the reasons is because Mercury is going to be retrograde in his own signs, but also the signs ruled by Venus. So for about 6 months out of the year, at least 6 to 9 months out of the year, Mercury is going to be in the air and earth signs. So again, wherever they fall for you, wherever Taurus and Gemini falls early in the year, from April 30th until July 25th, that's going to be really important for you. So understanding that cycle, very important. Wherever Virgo and Libra fall, that's going to also be very important, because Mercury is going to be hanging out there for about 3 months. And that's part of the personal forecast. Again, if you want to get the personal forecast for your sign or all 12 signs, you can also do that. And again, in the personal forecast, I just put the link there, but you can have me talk about each of these 10 indicators, but based on your chart. Again, if you're Virgo, that transit of Mercury through Libra and Virgo at the end from August until August 26th till November 20th. Think of how long that is. Mercury is going to be in those two signs for almost 3 months. So if you're a Virgo person, that's your 1st and 2nd house. Think of how important that is. If you're Gemini, that's your 4th and 5th house. If you're Taurus, it's your 5th and 6th houses. If you're Pisces, it's your 7th and 8th houses. Mercury's going to be hanging out there, and he's going to be really powerful because Mercury's the ruler of Virgo, and he's very strong in Libra as well. So a real opportunity to work through and understand a lot of things in 2021. So there's going to be a lot of big shifts that will be, I think, overall, there'll be a lot of pressure, as there always is, but overall, I think we're going to see a lot of improvement over things after the first part of the year, which is going to be, we're going to be rough getting through the first part of the year. We got that debilitated Jupiter. It's with Saturn. So, but it's going to show the stress of, again, getting through COVID and getting through the transitions that we're going through in the world, especially in light of this Mars and Aries I just talked about. That's no joke for the first few months of the year, right? But then, again, what will happen? Planets will move on. We have an exalted Venus coming in early March. Jupiter goes into Aquarius, again, and starts to shift out of that Capricorn. And again, that's going to be a nice shift. Bringing our inspirations into the social realm a lot more, rather than just sort of hunkering down and trying to survive and spinning out on crazy ideas like we've been the last couple years. I think Jupiter in Aquarius is going to elevate that dialogue, that social contract a lot more, representing a shift into that mindset. So we have some good things ahead, but we're where we are right now. And I wanted to make this video just to talk about that Gandantha, how important that is as a principle. I like to talk about these principles so you understand. And this is a big one. Again, it's in all the Jyotish texts, and they talk about this emphatically. And again, this is an absolute, again, not that I need to prove it, but this is absolute Vedic sidereal astrology 101. You can't have Gandantha unless nakshatras and rashis are aligned. Once you say Aries and Ashwini are at the beginning, then you have, again, Revati and Ashwini is a Gandantha point, Aslesha, Magha, and Jeshta Mula. Those Gandantha points snap into place, and it's in every text, and it's said to be that sort of untangling of the knot, where things for a while are just kind of flying around like, I don't know what we're doing now. I thought we were doing this. Now God knows what's happening. The boat has been unmoored. And so the current, you'll see what's going on. And again, I also referenced the current events here that we just had with the surprise. Mars is going to get out of the Gandantha by the 26th, which will be Monday. I think by Monday you'll see something will happen. They'll probably pass. What will happen is, Trump will probably sign whatever the heck it is and pass it and fund the government and get some of that money out. Right now it's like, who knows what's going on. But by that time, if not over the weekend, something will happen where, purely out of self-interest, he'll say, okay, I got to do this because it's making me look bad too, probably. And again, we will have seen, though, that this transit of Mars through the Gandantha has shown this disarray. By the way, this is also an exercise and a case study in Lahiri Ayanamsha. This is just based on Lahiri Ayanamsha. And this is why, I've just been using Lahiri Ayanamsha for years. You're seeing an example of it. You're seeing a case study. I have people all the time who are like, what do you think of this Ayanamsha? What about, why is it Chitra Paksha, opposite Chitra? What about this one? What about that one? What's the sense? Look, all of it's theoretical. And it's a good conversation about Ayanamsha and which Ayanamsha someone uses. This is why I just started using Lahiri for things just like this. And those who watch my channel know I do these updates all the time. Constantly I'm talking about these Gandantha points. It's almost always this kind of thing that shows up. Last time the Gandantha happened, by the way, I don't know if you remember. I do, because I watch it all the time. Go back and watch the videos that I did when Trump got COVID. Okay? The last time Mars went through this Gandantha, guess what was happening? Trump got COVID. So that's when it went retrograde back into Pisces. That's when Trump got COVID. And at the time, it was a big case. I did several videos, like one after the next, because it was Mars moving back from the 9th house through the Gandantha point into his 8th house. So that was the last time. And again, if you want to look at a case study, here's a case study. We can see Trump. I mean, he's a visible figure. So the last time it went through the Gandantha, he got COVID. Now it's passing through. He's lost an election. He's flailing. He's having a tantrum. He's railing his own party. I just saw he sent a tweet earlier today where he's attacking Republicans, and he says, "I'll never forget how you abandoned me," and stuff. Again, so now it's Mars going through the Gandantha again from Revati to Ashwini. So we see Trump as a figure. He's Leo, so Mars is very important for him. So again, very simple, but again, this is why you do research. Astrology is not a bunch of theory. Theories back up. You understand the theory. So the principle of the theory of this Ayanamsha is, why is it up? It's always been said that it's Aries and Ashwini. But exactly where do you start Aries and Ashwini? That's always been the question. And by the way, that's why they established a tropical zodiac, because they wanted to fix the beginning of the circle on something that's known, which is a vernal equinox. But the texts say Aries and Ashwini, and they're sidereal. Okay, but where exactly is it? Well, in the text, it also says Chitra, or Spica, is the alpha star, or the beginning of Libra. Okay, so you take that point and measure opposite that. That's what Chitrapaksha is, what it's called Chitrapaksha. That's where we start Lahiri Ayanamsha, is opposite Chitra with a certain calculation. So again, all of these things, the variations between these Ayanamshas and what have you, are also, they're less than 1 degree. Most of them are half of a degree, one way or another, but you have to examine it. You have to look at it. You have to do your research. After sort of messing with it over the years, I just realized this is really, really pretty much right on. And as a practical matter, when I'm doing readings, whenever there's something that's a little bit sloppy, let's say people obsess over something like the Ayanamsha, but the biggest problem isn't the Ayanamsha when you're doing chart readings, it's the birth times. So again, by the time you get to rectifying a chart, if you need to rectify it, the difference in whatever the Ayanamsha might be, which is usually less than 1 degree, by the time you get to looking at that, it's much less important than the fact that someone has a birth time that's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Which nobody's born right on the hour. So if you need to rectify because it's that close, the problem isn't the Ayanamsha, the problem is the birth time. So this is why even in a practical matter, just as an aside for astrology students or people watching, the whole thing even about Ayanamsha is a bogus argument, because by the time you get to rectifying charts and doing actual astrology work, the Ayanamsha is really not even a big deal. The big deal is birth times. And by the time you rectify birth times, it tightens up all the slop that would be attributed to the Ayanamsha anyway. So that's how it works. Anybody wondering that? But anyway, so this is a good opportunity to show you some of this working in real time. And also this big shift now, Mars is not going back into Pisces again. He's moving forward. And there's a saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. Right? Just got to keep going. Just keep going. Come on. If you're going through hell, keep going. And what's been happening is we started going through hell, and then we went retrograde, then we're going again. Now it's those that last road through hell. I'm kidding. Just making a joke, but it's Mars is going to keep going through, and we'll just leave it at that. Of course, Nicole says Merry Christmas Eve. Yes, of course. I want to thank everyone for your influence in my life. I'm a very lucky man to be able to make a living doing what I love. Sitting here, spontaneously decided, I'll make a video and send it out there, and people enjoy it, and I can help people and talk about things that I love to talk about. And so you make that possible, and I really appreciate your attention, and people who get courses and whatever that allow me to contribute what I love and my heart's desire, and sit in a nice place here in San Diego. Here, look at my view. Isn't that nice? Look at my telescope. Telescope there. Out the window, there's a nice. I bought the telescope. I tried to get a telescope about 5 times bigger than that. I used to have access to a really big telescope when I was a kid. It was like a big, what's called a refractor. And I tried to start buying a telescope a couple months ago, and all of them are back ordered until like February. So I wound up getting this little one, this little one over here, and it just didn't have the juice. It just didn't have the juice that I wanted to. So when the the Jupiter Saturn conjunction this week, I got to see it, but it was just kind of small, and it wasn't. I was hoping I'd see a big a big thing, but so I'm going to be getting a big one. And this balcony faces west, so I have the whole western sky. I see a beautiful sunset every day. So it's so I like having it sit there, though. It's nice to have it sitting over there, and yeah. But anyway, I appreciate everyone. I'm glad people like my work. I hope it serves you. I'll do my best to continue and. I feel very blessed myself. I feel sad on some level to see how stressed out and nervous and paranoid and upset so many people are about things. I think like I just said, we have some stressful days ahead for sure, but things are going to be getting better. Things are going to be getting better, but part of it is we have to start being better as well. Trying to get back to, a factual world, a real world, getting out of the triggering, getting out of the, a lot of the negative qualities of the last few years, and I see that coming. So, anyway, we'll leave it at that, and I hope you all have a great holiday, a great Christmas. I'll be here, in socially distant, but I have friends. I played some tennis today. I have a few friends to meet up with, not tomorrow, but by the end of the weekend. So I'm living a good life, and I hope you are as well. I hope you're being, thoughtful and kind and healthy, and we're all on the cusp of better days. So you take care.